Hello, welcome to the world of trying to lose weight and get your body in balance. Hi, I'm Dr. Cliff Thomas. I've been seeing patients for thousands of years and I've researched lots and lots of papers, and the only proven method for long-term success is changing your eating habits. Throughout all these years, most of us have tried every diet under the sun and they don't seem to work. And what that tells us is that all that expert advice is wrong. And I'd like to share why. The main reason, or one of the many reasons that it's wrong, is that it's based on poor science. So let's talk about calories. Calories is talked about all the time. It's in every phone app that has to do with losing weight that's available. Almost every method talks about calories in and calories out. And what's wrong with that is it starts with a fundamental flaw based on really poor science. So I'd like to take you through that for a moment. Over 100 years ago, they took a box and they called it a bomb calorimeter. And they called it that because they knew how every part within the box exchanged heat. So that whenever they burned the food with a flame and that food caught on fire and burned, it would release heat. And the amount of heat released that raised 1 gram of water, 1 degree centigrade, was a calorie. Now, our body doesn't function that way. There is nothing in our body that even approaches like a flame burning food. So it starts with a huge fundamental flaw. There's a Dr. Atwater who developed and took some mathematical assumptions and related that to digestion to make it seem accurate. The fact is that's never been correlated, and so the whole calorie concept gets passed on decade after decade with really poor science. It's kind of garbage in, garbage out. There are some newer methods that possibly measure the calories that are in food or the food energy in food, but they're very expensive. And they're possibly more accurate on the area of burning calories, but all the machines that are measuring burning calories, they're not measuring those accurately. The methods that may measure it somewhat accurately are very expensive and involve having a mask on the person's face while they're exercising. So calories are very inaccurate. Can you imagine all that's been talking about 1,200 calorie diet, 1,000 calorie diet, 1,500 calorie diet? And the fact is, we don't know that there's really any difference between 1,000 calorie and a 1,500 calorie diet because the science is so incredibly poor. What makes that even worse is that the calories that are within food are put on food labels. So they haven't even burned that many foods. They developed a database. When a company needs to add add a label to their food, all they do is go to the database. They go to the company that makes the food labels and they refer to their database. They rarely burn foods. And then you take another concept that's used very often, which is the body mass index. That's a measure of obesity based on your height and your weight. It does not account for your lean body mass, which is your muscle and your bones. So my body mass index is 28. And according to that, I'm obese, but I'm not. And it's because I have dense bone and dense muscle. So the body mass index is also a very poor measurement of obesity. Yet every study that's ever been done, whether, X number of people within the United States are obese, that's using the body mass index as the measure, and it's really poor. Again, garbage in, garbage out kind of information. So if you can't trust the expert advice on what to eat because it's confusing, conflicting, misleading, and based on poor science, then how do you know what to eat? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. Just like the Bob Dylan song, and just like the wind, the answer is in your face. In other words, your body is talking to you. Are you listening? Awareness is the key to all change. Awareness is what works if you're wanting to change. So what works and why diets don't work? Well, the primary reason is our gut brain is very complex and we know very little about it. So let me tell you what I'm talking about. Our brain here, we know an awful lot about it. Our gut brain, which has a lot of the same kind of neural and chemical pathways and hormones and other communicators, yet we know very little about it because it's so incredibly complex. And to give an analogy that will help you understand this, I hope, is it's like our solar system. We actually know the distance from Mars to the Sun, or the distance from Mars to Earth. We know that very accurately. We know an awful lot about our solar system. But the Milky Way, that big mass of stars above us, we don't know very much about that. We don't even know if there's 100 billion stars or 400 billion stars. So with complex systems, how do you know what works? And we've actually figured that out a long time ago. You find out by a trial and error method. In other words, you make a good guess, you try it, see how it works, and you learn from your mistake and move on. I'd like to call ours trial and success, so that you learn to self-experiment and find what works for you. Most of these diet books and things that come along, they seem to assume that one diet fits all, but we're all different. We're at 0.1% difference, but that difference is huge. And we have different tastes, various cultures, differences in food availability, and we have different food sensitivities. So some expert cannot tell you exactly what you should eat to have a body in balance and a body not carrying extra weight. You have to learn that yourself through self-experimentation and awareness to how the food affects how you feel and perform every day that you eat. So you need to develop self-experimentation and develop the awareness so that you know how food affects how you feel and perform. The experts kind of have a God complex. They learn one part of the system and they act as if some way you can manipulate that one thing, say it's ghrelin, which affects hunger, and they got a new pill for it or whatever, and that's going to change. But we do not know how every instrument in the orchestra is working together. And for that reason, the only thing that's going to work is your own trial and success, self-experimentation, developing awareness method. So the only proven method for long-term success is to change your eating habits. The problem is changing habits that have been with you for a very long time are not that easy to change. So another thing that we hear often is it only takes 21 days to change a habit. And I consider that kind of BS. I think it takes 21 days to detox from your previous habits, to kind of get over the withdrawal symptoms from the previous way that you were eating. And so in our step-by-step method, it has a detox method, and that's simply to get you away from your current eating habits so that you can start some success habits and see what works for you. You have to commit to long-term change. Short-term change simply does not work. We've all done it. You go on a diet, you change a few things, but if it's not sustainable, if you cannot keep it up for the rest of your life, you're wasting your time, and probably this rapid weight loss is causing you to lose some of your muscle mass, which is very important. So get away from the quick diets. They're not doing you any good, and they're not going to work long-term to getting you to feeling like you feel you should feel. So the very first thing you got to do, the most important thing you got to do, is commit to long-term change. And so how do you do that? Well, you kind of got to sit down and know your reward. You got to know what it is that you're trying to achieve and why is that so important to you. Emotional memory is by far our most powerful memory. So if you can bring back emotional moments, maybe you were doing an athletic event or doing something with your kids, and at a time when you were able to move and your body felt good, or you had a lot of energy and mental clarity, you remember that person, but you're not feeling like that person now. You need to be able to bring up those memories to help you understand how important it is to commit to long-term change. You need to keep the conversation going for the rest of your life. And what I'm talking about that is every day you need to be asking yourself why you're eating. And if you didn't do well with your eating habits today, how can you do better tomorrow? The day you're in trouble is when you're no longer having those conversations. So you've got to commit to change. And once you start change, you have to keep that commitment by keeping the conversation going. I'd like to warn you to be aware of false expectations. And that's really part of the problem with much of the expert advice, including the calorie concept, where we measure calories in and then we get on the treadmill, measure calories out, and then we're not seeing the kind of results we expect. And what happens? We want to quit. So whenever we're given some expectation and we expect an outcome and that outcome does not happen, then we want to quit. And quitting will not give you the long-term success that you need. So that's the problem with many false expectations. I like people not to get on the bathroom scales because that's measuring water weight primarily, and our water weight varies quite a bit from day to day depending on how much salt we eat, our hormonal balance, and a variety of things. It's not really measuring how much fat you're carrying at all. But what happens when you get on the scales and you've done a lot of things right and you're not seeing the scales change as fast as you'd like, it makes you want to quit. So avoid false expectations like using pounds lost as a measure of your success. Start paying attention to your body. Start paying attention to how you feel. Those are true measures of success and they're not false expectations. So you're going to have all kinds of voices bouncing around in your head as you begin to change. Some you're going to feel resistance. Some you're going to, it's going to be talking to you. And I just suggest that you watch this Bob Newhart video about just stop it. And after you watch it, just whenever those voices that you know are working against you pop up in your brain, just embrace them, acknowledge them, laugh at them, and then tell yourself, just stop it, just like Bob Newhart tells this lady in the video. So our body is talking to us, are we listening? In other words, are we developing awareness? Because awareness is the key to all change. If we want to change our eating habits, which is the only proven method for long-term success, are we listening to our body? So I'd like to share a few things that may help. What I'd like you to do is when you begin to eat, to ask yourself why you're eating. Are you eating for nutrients? Are you eating for pleasure? Or are you eating to meet some unmet need? Now, when you're talking about nutrients, if it's got calcium, magnesium, vitamin A, vitamin B's, whatever, variety, then it's got nutrients. You're eating nutrient food. If you're eating for pleasure, that's totally okay. I really hate to see people blame themselves for eating for pleasure. Pleasure is part of life. It's a spice of life. We should enjoy pleasure. However, we should not do it frequently and we should not do it with a pattern. So what am I talking about? You should be able to look back at a whole month and say, I just had a great cookie, but I haven't had one in a really long time. That's totally okay. So if you're at grandma's house and she's just made these amazing cookies and you're not going to eat them day after day, it's just going to be like this one cookie, this one-time thing. Maybe it's 2 cookies, this one-time thing. That's going to be okay. It's not going to do your body any harm. But if you take home some cookies and you eat them tomorrow and the next day, now you got a problem. Another problem is whenever you eat with a particular pattern. What happens is you condition yourself for pleasure, and you don't want to condition yourself for pleasure. You want to enjoy every step of the way with pleasure. So Pavlov's dog, they fed the dog food and measured salivation, and then they fed the dog food, rang a bell, and measured salivation. And then all they had to do is ring the bell and the dog would salivate because it was conditioned to salivate when it would hear the bell, even without the food. So you do not want to condition yourself for pleasure. You want to enjoy every step of the way. So you don't want a certain pattern to your pleasure eating. You want to do it whenever it's quality and it's what you really like. And you don't want to do it very often. So you should start every meal asking yourself, are you eating for nutrients, are you eating for pleasure, or eating for some unmet need? Then you should eat your meal and think of the volume that you just ate. Did you eat that much? Or maybe up to the first knuckle much? Or did you eat 2 of them? Or did you eat 3 of them? And then I want you to check in 1 hour after eating and ask yourself how you felt. How you feel. Do you have energy? Do you have mental clarity? How does your body feel? Does it feel like it can move and go do something? And then think back to the volume of food that you ate. And ask, and the kind of food that you ate. Was it nutrient food? Or was it pleasure food, or what we often call comfort food? And then kind of relate that to how you feel. Because whenever you can make the connection between the food that you eat and how you feel an hour after eating and the next morning, that's really where a big reward comes from. When you make that connection and you choose to feel good. Most of us will choose to feel good. We do not like feeling bad. When we realize that our food choices affect how we feel an hour after eating the next morning, it helps us change our eating habits. So you're at a restaurant and it's the best steak you've ever had, and it's a 6 ounce or an 8 ounce. But you really need to stop at about 3.5 ounces. At that point, you've already tasted it, you've already paid for it. Really, the only thing that's going to change an hour after eating is how you feel. So you need to learn the proper amount of food that you can eat where you actually have energy, mental clarity, and your body feels good. And that's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a lot of repetition. You're going to have to do it over and over. You're going to have to reinforce it over and over. You're going to have to realize when you've gone too long between meals and you overeat, make the worst choices, how that really makes you feel bad, and to just laugh at yourself and say, well, I didn't do well today, I'm going to do better tomorrow. These are simply tools for developing awareness. And we have some pretty amazing additional tools, which would be a phone app, and actually a spectrophotometer that will measure the chemicals in your food and help you understand which chemicals make you feel good and which chemicals make you feel bad. So stay tuned. That's going to be amazing catalyst, I think, for worldwide change. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about success habits. These are habits that we know work. So I want you to self-experiment and find what works for you, but I want you to start with these known success habits. They're very basic, they're easy to do, you'll find some resistance to doing them, in which case you'll back up and ask yourself, if I was given $1 million to eat every 3.5 to 4 hours, could I do that? And you'd say, yeah, that would be an easy $1 million. So once you realize that it actually is easy and not difficult, it helps get beyond that resistance. And also, if you can remember, like we mentioned earlier, to bring up that emotional memory of why you really want to get your body in balance and feel good and get back to feeling like you. So the basic success habits, you need to keep your volume of food roughly in the 4 to 6 ounce range. You've got to eat breakfast. You just went through a night of not eating. You need to signal to the body that, yes, there's food. You don't need to store food. There's food available. You generally don't have to eat very much. It can be, it can be half a banana. It can be really simple. You need to eat roughly every 3.5 to 4 hours. And so what's going on with that? What physiology is involved? Don't really know, but I do know that the only way you're going to feel good an hour after eating next morning and long term is if you stop your meal at roughly 4.5 to 6 ounces. And if you eat 4.5 to 6 ounces of food, you have to eat every 3.5 to 4 hours. If you wait 5 hours, you're going to be too hungry, you're going to make poor choices, you're going to eat the wrong food, and you're going to eat too fast, and you're probably going to overeat. 4 to 6 ounces every 3.5 to 4 hours. Very important. You need to plan your eating. So we think of snacking as eating small meals. So I like to get away from that concept. I want us to eat small meals. What I want us to not do is have unplanned eating. That's where you just walk by and see food and nibble on it and blah, blah, blah. Food should not touch your fingers unless it's a planned eating time. Food should not touch your fingers unless it's a planned eating time. And I want you to mostly drink water. And if you don't really like water that much, just give yourself a better mental image of water in a beautiful stream and how cold and refreshing it is. And make sure you pick a container that has a good taste to it. Most plastic containers really have a taste that's not so good. So find water that tastes good, find a container that works well, carry it with you and drink often. The only way your body's going to be in balance is if you're drinking often and keeping your water balance appropriate, and mostly drink water. Do not drink with your meals. And what this is all about is a lot of people that have gained extra weight and their body's out of balance is they're used to slugging down a glass or two with every meal, maybe 3. That washes the food out of your stomach before you get the proper fullness. And because of that, you eat much more. You want to eat a small volume of food, you want to get that proper fullness. That's very important. So don't drink with your meals. Now, it's totally okay if you have a few sips with your meal, but if you're one of those people that drink several glasses with a meal, then you need to not have a glass near your plate. And if you need a drink so bad that you're willing to get up and go to the kitchen or go to a little bit of effort to get something to drink, then go for it. You're not going to do that day after day after day. So that's a mental trick that'll help you get away from this habit. You also need to learn to eat slow. So that's the only way you're going to get the proper fullness sensation with 4 to 6 ounces of food. So you got to eat slow. And the primary way you do that is you let go of what you're eating with. You actually set it down. Take a bite and set it down. Also think that you should mostly eat lean meats, produce, eggs, nuts, cheese, and other whole foods. So we think of whole foods as the food that comes from the whole food grocery store. But what I'm talking about, a whole food is one ingredient. An egg's just an egg, an almond's just an almond. Cheese is basically just cheese. So what we're really talking about is getting away from packaged food and all those chemical influences that are probably keeping our body out of balance. You've got to get comfortable wasting food. So just like I was talking about eating that 3.5 ounces of 6 to 8 ounce steak, you've got to get comfortable wasting that food, because the only thing that changes is how you're going to feel 1 hour after eating. Also, it's very easy to bring bad food home. If you're willing to eat one serving and throw it away, you will quit bringing food home. And it will kind of get you beyond another thing that our brain really doesn't like, which is telling it can't have something. You're telling it you can have it, but if you do, you're going to have to waste some food. And you're wanting to bring home this bag of chips at the grocery store, you can, but you're going to eat one helping and you're going to throw it away. Our body doesn't like that. It's a very powerful tool to help you change. So most of these success eating habits seem very simple. You're like, duh, I was wanting something really magical. Well, attached is our ebook on success habits. Read it. I think you'll be surprised of all the nuances in there that's going to help you lock in these successful habits and figure out how they work for you. So to kind of go over again, there's a few mental tricks that are very useful when you're trying to change your eating habits, because changing your eating habits is very difficult. So when you feel the resistance, then you need to do one or two things or both. You need to bring up that emotional memory of why you want to lose weight and why you want to get your body healthy and in balance, and really feel the emotion of that, because then the resistance fades. The other thing you want to do is you want to ask yourself, if I was given $1 million to not bring home this bucket of Bluebell ice cream, would that be easy? And absolutely it would be easy. So once you realize it's actually easy, that helps. Again, never tell your brain that it can't have something. It doesn't like that. But tell your brain it can have it, but you got to go to a little bit of effort. So when you're at the grocery store and you're looking at a bucket of ice cream, yeah, you don't want to bring it home. But if you're at home and you're really wanting some ice cream and you're willing to get in the car and take the family and make an outing of it, go and enjoy it. You're not going to do that night after night. And if you're doing it night after night, well, you know, that's not going to work either. But it doesn't happen. It's anytime we make one of those kind of desires a little bit of trouble, they tend to fade away over time. It's a very powerful tool. And you've got to get comfortable wasting food. So become your own nutrition expert. And the way you're going to do that is we're also going to have attached a step-by-step method to help you detox for a couple of weeks and get away from your previous eating habits, and then start walking through these success habits. And then you're going to self-experiment. You're going to find out what works for you. What foods make you feel better and make you perform better, think with more clarity, and a body that just feels good. We have some amazing tools to help you start listening to your body. One is reading our book, MyFood, MyLife. Not a diet, a way to change your eating habits and change your life, including weight loss. And we're going to have a phone app that's going to allow you to photograph your food and log in while you're eating and the volume that you're eating. And at the end of the week, you'll be able to look and see the foods and volumes that make you feel bad and the food and volumes that make you feel good, so that you develop that awareness. But then we have something very amazing, which is an upgrade developed by another company. It's a handheld spectrophotometer that will communicate with my phone app, so that the chemicals in food, for the first time, you'll be able to read them, because what's on food labels isn't accurate. But when you can actually read them for the first time ever, and they go to your own personal database, and they will show you, when you eat these chemicals, you feel good. When you eat these chemicals, you feel bad. You'll change. And it's my belief that over time, that will get your body in balance, including get you to a place where you're not carrying extra pounds that makes you feel not like you.